everybody. Welcome to another webinar here at Route Consultant. For those of you who have never been to one of these before, my name is Josh Gregory. I am the Vice President of Education here at Route Consultant. All that means is that I'm going to work with you regardless of what you're looking at in this space, whether you are a current contractor trying to find out what's going on in the industry today, or just find ways to better optimize your business moving forward into whatever market we're in, or you're a new investor looking to get into this business for the first time. We really like to use these webinars so that you can learn more about things that are happening, ask questions, and always be a place that we can come together and learn every week. Now, before we go too far, I just want to quickly read the disclaimer, as I do every week. So Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. So for all of you who have been here before, you will know the drill. The format of today is that I'll go over some content that we'll talk through, and then I'll go over the new listings, the upcoming events, and then we will make sure at the end that if there's any questions that you have today, that we will have time to answer them. So whether those questions come in while I'm talking or you wait to type them in at the end, completely fine. We'll get to it at the end though. So if those questions come up, type it into the Q&A box at the bottom. If you put it in the chat or if you raise your hand, I might miss it. So use that Q&A button at the bottom of the window and we'll make sure to get to all those questions by the end of the webinar today. So today, what we're focusing on is a really important part of any logistics operation. Doesn't matter if it's FedEx or elsewhere, and that's thinking through the strategy around both your maintenance and your fleet. And the two of those need to be intertwined for you to be successful. And hear what I said there. Maintenance can't just be a thing you think about when something breaks. It needs to be a real strategy that's thought out, it's programmatic, it's inspected and enforced. You need those. So in the FedEx space, you really need two things to make money in this business, and that's people and it's trucks. And if the trucks aren't running, you're not making any money. So what I'm going to be doing today is going over a few of the things that we've learned over the years here, and then come back and give you all some time at the end asking follow-up questions, like I said, so that you can tweak your current strategy, or if you're new in the space and you're planning yours, make sure you have the right one as you get into the business for the first time. And an important caveat for everybody today, I'm going to be focusing on more of the P&D space this week. We'll have another webinar next week where we'll talk about how this applies to the FedEx line haul space, and we'll have a current line haul contractor as a guest on as well. So tune in for next week if you're interested in line haul and want to kind of hear how that feels from that side of the equation. Now, if there are any of you that are P&D contractors right now, and are in the P&D space right now, you will be intimately familiar with your fleet and the inspections because of the inspection emphasis that FedEx had this past month. And it really serves to emphasize exactly why this topic is so important and should always be top of mind. Now, if you aren't a current contractor, you probably aren't aware here, but at the beginning of April, FedEx came in and announced that they'd be doing inspections on all vehicles by May 1st, which is today, to check that any of the vehicles that you had listed on your Schedule B contract had to comply with both their safety technology and security standards that are outlined in the contract. Now, anyone who is found breaking those rules would get an OTC, an opportunity to cure letter, and have to either meet the standards or remove their vehicles from Schedule B over the next 14 days. And some contractors were really caught flat-footed by this and are struggling to have their vehicles meet those standards in time. Of course, as always, some of this is also on FedEx because they gave a really short timeline, definitely trying to catch people who are doing this as opposed to allowing for real correction. And there are, one of the big challenges, there's a lot of the parts that are on back order since a lot of these technologies are only supplied by one approved vendor through FedEx. And so it is taking some time to get some of those parts, but regardless, it's a really important wake-up call and kind of a word of warning for future contractors that FedEx is really wanting you to focus your time and your attention on your fleet strategy to make sure that your trucks are always in compliance and up and running. So for all of you who are in the space right now, you're feeling it. But again, I wanted to use today to help plan and think through some of the tips, some of the strategies that I want everyone to be building into their business at all times. And so let's start with the maintenance side of the coin. Now, at a minimum, when it comes to maintenance, you need to know that all of your scheduled maintenance, all of your maintenance is scheduled, and that you have some kind of program to keep track of it. And that program needs to be measurable if you want it to be successful. It's really important to at least get all of your scheduled maintenance tracked and handled for a couple of main reasons. I mean, one, obviously, fluids and oil are a lot easier and a lot cheaper to replace than waiting until, a transmission or an engine breaks. So the semi-tedious task of always staying on top of those is one of the most important ways you keep your trucks on the road. And also, a lot of these warranties, if you are getting vehicles with warranties, require you to stay on top of that anyway. So this is a bare minimum. Everyone in the logistics space, everyone in the FedEx space needs to, at minimum, be staying on top of their scheduled maintenance. But beyond that, I'd really recommend either using a software or building something yourself that can start to track all of the maintenance costs, and ideally split those out per vehicle so that you can really start to watch trends to notice if one vehicle is starting to become an outlier from a cost perspective. One of the other critical things here is you want to make sure that your drivers know that they can tell you immediately anytime there's a vehicle issue, whether they notice in their pre-check inspection before they go out, or it's something that happens in the middle of the day. They need to know to immediately call you or a manager and report it. And it just has to be a commitment from you. You need to understand that this is something you can't punish drivers for reporting maintenance issues, because they'll get it in their head that they're going to get in trouble if you find out the vehicle has an issue, and you'll blame them. And so they just won't say anything. So you really need to create a culture where they tell you, and maybe you even call them and thank them, or call them out in a meeting, or even reward them in some way for telling you. Because if you're able to stay on top of these issues and correct them early, you'll save tens of thousands of dollars every year. You can't let there be any kind of driver culture where they're afraid to call you and they're hiding issues, because that's just going to lead to one, a culture of distrust, but also that's how vehicles have these major repairs, because no one fixed them when there was a chance to in that window when you first caught it. One of the things that we did in our business was we created kind of an internal checklist program, almost like a mini inspection. We called it the first and 15th report. We can share that with you if you reach out. But it is essentially just, like I said, a mini DOT inspection that we would have either a manager or a mechanic do on the 1st and 15th of every month. Now, not only does that make sure that you're catching problems quickly, but it's also a really good way to spot check whether your drivers are properly checking and reporting on vehicle issues. And so that's something that we would have them, write it down and input into a database so that we could track all of that and have really good data to see throughout the year at 2 points at least per month how all of our vehicles were doing. Now, that's kind of a build it yourself option. I did mention software as well, and that is an option. Software can definitely help. There are lots of companies that can kind of augment what you're doing here. There are companies like Whip Around and Fleet.io, Fleetio that specialize in it. And if you're already working with a company like Ground Cloud, they have products that are a part of their existing platform or their pro platform that you can add in. But really what you want out of the software here is you want something that can, at minimum, like I said, track your scheduled and preventative maintenance, but also track any trending data to call out issues, track your fuel usage as a data point, handle any of your compliance and reporting. And another thing that I really like is if they have a good mobile app so that drivers can take pictures of an issue, some kind of damage, some kind of issue in the vehicle, and submit details into the app in real time. And so if you're going through this and you're trying to find the right vendor partner for you, just reach out to us. We have all those contacts. We can point you in the right direction and make sure that you're going the right way. One of the last things, just as a side note, I'll mention here, anytime that you can find a way to use bulk fluids, so where you're not just buying at retail pricing from an auto parts or a Napa, your oil and all of the fluids. If you can find ways to buy 55-gallon drums or just large bulk fluids for your fleet, you're going to save thousands of dollars every year. The biggest challenge when it comes to bulk is finding the right place to store it. So whether it's a terminal that allows it, or if you can work with a local mechanic and reserve space at that mechanic, sometimes that can be the best way to kind of find a way to store it. But if you can buy that in bulk, like I said, you will save thousands every year. And the bigger you are, the more money you'll save there. So that is the maintenance side of things. But like I said, I'm going to finish up here with a focus on your overall fleet strategy, which when you're thinking through it, should be informed by the maintenance strategy that you chose, as I was just talking about. Now, when we ran our business, we found that it was most effective to purchase new vehicles. And we would run them to a particular mileage threshold, and then we would turn around and then sell those vehicles to buy new again. And so for the P&D space, like we're focused on here, we typically sell vehicles around the 150,000 to 200,000 mile point. Now, the pros, the best things about this strategy that we found was that buying new lets you, one, reset the depreciation. We were always focused on our tax credits and benefits. It also lets you have significantly lower repair and maintenance costs because you're bringing in new vehicles that should have fewer issues. And in fact, many of those will come with warranties for the first few years to really help you offset any costs there. And then when you sell those vehicles, especially at the point we were selling it, at that 150 to 200,000 point, you're still getting a really nice residual value from those vehicles, because that's not true end of life. Because to be clear, in the P&D space, typically these vehicles, if you wanted to take them out, could last as long as 500,000 miles, or for diesels, even 600,000 miles. So we were still selling our vehicles when they had, some good years of life left in them. But for us, our target was we'd find a certain repair and maintenance curve, a cost of that curve, where when it got to that point, we would sell them, start fresh, reset, get the residual value, reset the depreciation. And that was our strategy. That's what we, did best. When you buy new, you're also getting the newest safety features. You're having the most reliable fleet you can, the best fuel efficiency, and a higher quality of life for your drivers, because it's the newer, nicer vehicles. And they're in those all day long, you aren't. So there's lots of benefits to it, but buying new vehicles is expensive. There's, whether you finance or purchase it in cash, there is a cost to it. And so there's a couple of things to think about as kind of caveats, or things to just consider if you're trying to decide what fleet strategy here. The first is, when it comes to your territory, I talked about this some on the webinar a couple of weeks ago, but if you have a really low mileage territory, that 150 to 200,000 mile threshold is not a number you're going to hit anytime soon. It may be that it would take 7 to 10 years before you hit that. And so what you may be, instead of targeting a mileage threshold at those low mileage territories, you may just decide to set a certain number of years, where once you reach 7 years is when you decide to sell your vehicles. But that also impacts, if you wanted, you could get used vehicles and they would still last longer because of such low mileage that you're doing. An interesting model that we've done, and we've seen a lot of others do it as well, is to rotate your vehicles if you have some kind of mixed composition territory. So let's say that your territory is a mix of high mileage rural routes and some really dense city routes. You can use those newer vehicles on the high mileage routes for a couple of years. And those high mileage routes, you need more reliable vehicles because they're out on the road longer, they're farther away from the terminal. So if there is a breakdown, it's harder to deal with. So you really want those, newer, reliable vehicles on that high mileage routes. But, they're going to take some wear and tear. So after a couple of years, you probably won't want them on your rural routes anymore, but you can rotate them into some of your denser city routes. And since they're doing such low mileage, since they're close to the terminal, you can get some extra life out of those vehicles if that is your strategy. It's also always going to be important to consider the market you're operating in. And that's not just territory. What I'm talking about here is, right now, the interest rates are really high. So financing is a little bit more expensive than it was a few years ago, a lot more expensive than it was a few years ago. And so it may make more sense to buy some used vehicles right now, not completely end of life used, maybe just a few years of work to get a cheaper price and still have usable vehicles on the road. The big thing here though is that the amount of life that you can get out of a vehicle, out of a used vehicle, is going to be a function of the success of your maintenance strategy. So what I was talking about before, if you can keep your vehicles healthy for longer, then it extends the life of the vehicle and spreads your CapEx farther, spreads it out over time. So it all comes back to like what I was saying before. The better maintenance strategy you have, the better you can extend the life of the vehicle. So it could be that you have such an excellent maintenance strategy that you always do buy new vehicles, but you extend it for, all the way up to the 300, 400,000 mile point because you're always able to keep those vehicles really healthy. That's why I say those two need to really be intertwined to find success. Now, the last thing I'll mention is that there are full service leasing options in this space. For P&D, we point you to companies like Hello Truck Leasing or Bush that have these full service leasing options. And so these options are ones that will cover all of your repair and maintenance expenses. And so it turns your future CapEx spend into a fixed monthly payment, since you'll be able to run the current vehicle for a few years and you can turn around and renew the lease with a new vehicle. And so full service leases are really a way to give you the peace of mind of knowing that you have new vehicles on the road. It improves that quality of life for the drivers and it makes the operations run more smoothly. And it's a fixed cost. So you know what you're paying. There's not a lot of variables and factors to figure out there. But you are paying for those leases. So remember, it's an expense that you would have to pay at some point in the vehicle to replace the vehicle, but instead you're covering it in a fixed monthly payment. So it's a way where you've turned your future CapEx into a fixed monthly payment, which is one of the only real ways to do that. So those are kind of the big things that I want you to consider from both a maintenance and a fleet strategy standpoint. There's lots of other things we can talk about here, lots of other things I can dig into. And if you have questions on, I'm here to answer. But as I mentioned at the beginning, we can show you what's worked for us and we can give you tips to run your fleet efficiently, but there will always be some nuance here to fit what your goals are and what your territory looks like. And so you need to build the right strategy for you and to hold yourself accountable to it to ensure that your business remains healthy. Now, if you're trying to think through this, if you're having challenges creating that strategy for your business now, or a business that you're reviewing or evaluating, reach out to our team. We're always happy to help. We do this every single day and we'll be happy to help. So beyond that, I've got a couple of events and inventory that I want to go through. And so if anyone has questions, now's your time to start typing it in frantically while I'm going through this inventory. So 2 new listings this week. The first is a FedEx P&D business out of Middle Tennessee. So this is 13 P&D routes at 1.2 million. Pretty high margin here at 22% with 2 managers. It's got 2 spare vehicles as well, and all the vehicles are newer models. And it's a really low mileage territory. So if you're looking for something in the Middle Tennessee area, home to us and not too far from us, you can use it as an excuse to come visit our office when you're looking at the territory. Reach out about that one. The last new listing we have today is an Amazon listing out of Southern Nevada. And so this is averaging about 25 routes a day at a 2.2 million listing price. Another high margin business, 24% margin. They've got 2 managers that are really handling all of the daily operations. And for those of you who kind of understand the Amazon side, this is a company and owner that regularly achieve either fantastic or fantastic plus in their business, which is how you get the bonuses and the higher revenue in the Amazon space. A couple of events that are coming up just to make sure everybody's aware of them. One, we have our new investor summit, which those are designed for people who are trying to figure out if FedEx is the right thing for them and decide whether line haul or P&D is the right fit for them. So those new investor summits are a combination of 2 things. One, if you sign up now, you get access to a whole host of digital content where it is a crash course where we try to teach you as much as we can about the space to really help you make that decision. And then 2, there is an in-person workshop in our Nashville office that's included with that digital content, where you can come, you can meet our team, have your questions answered, go over specific listings you're looking at, talk, with all different members of our team to make sure you're really comfortable here. And our next one is on May 24th. We just put the link in the chat. So if that's something of interest for you, we've got that out there and you can register now. Also, we do happy hours across the country, and our next one is on June 4th, and it's in Baltimore. So if you're up on the East Coast, and we're coming your way in the next couple of weeks, I guess it's a month from now. That's free to attend. We'll provide all the food and drinks, and we'll have vendors and our team there. So if you want to come out and meet us, you can go ahead and register for that as well at the link that's in the chat. And then lastly, always most importantly, the expo is coming up. That is, again, completely free to attend. And that is our giant contractor party where we have contractors from across the country come in. We have sessions in all different kinds of spaces. We have, food and drink all day long for 2.5 days. And it is a time really to come together, to network, to find out about the future of our industry and how to continue to be profitable, make more money, and learn from each other. So if you're interested in that, like I said, free to attend and register. It's just that the hotel rooms will sell out. The hotel block that we have at that nice Gaylord property in Dallas, Texas. So if you're interested, register, but just make sure that really book those rooms in advance if you want to secure those rates. So other than that, that's really what I wanted to cover today. So I'm not seeing any questions come in, so I'll give the going once. Going twice. All right, I'll call it for now. So everybody, thanks so much. And again, like I said, this week was focused on P&D. If you're here and you want to learn about line haul, we'll do the same thing next week with a focus on line haul. For everybody who's here, thanks for attending, and looking forward to seeing you all next week on our next webinar. Thanks.